In the previous video, I showed you how you can use certain plugins like the overdrive or the tape delay to get a more analog type sound coming out of Logic Pro. Now, this without a doubt works best if you do it across all your channels, because that way every individual channel gets its own analog treatment, for lack of a better word. And I also mentioned that it's quite tedious to have to go into the mixer channels all the time, pull up the overdrive, bring the settings to where you want them, and this for each channel. It's very time consuming and it can really get in the way of your workflow. To speed things up, you could maybe make a user default, save as default, and now each time that I bring up the overdrive, let me take it out here, it'll have those settings that I saved it with, as you'll see. See, the settings are all right now, but still I need to pull it up each time and maybe start copying them over all my channels. What if I told you there's a way to have the overdrive plugin or any other type of plugin or combination of plugins load onto your channels automatically whenever you create a new channel? Well, that is possible these days in Logic, and I'll show it to you right now because this is really a time saver. This is an audio track. I'm always going to use an EQ on my audio tracks. Sometimes I'm using a compressor on my audio tracks. Okay, so I'll plug that in as well, but bypass it because not every channel needs compression. And then we go to the overdrive. Now in this case, I'm going to drop the overdrive down a couple slots because I want to have it as the last plugin on my audio tracks. So there's plenty of space to put in other plugins if I need to. And the overdrive will be the final plugin. It's still on these settings, so that's just fine. Let me just save this again as default. Hold on, maybe to 20K. Save as default and replace that. So how about some sends? I don't want to pull up sends each time I need a little reverb. I'd like them to be available automatically. So there's a send to bus 3 and bus 4, 2 reverb units. And this configuration, so to speak, is what I'm going to save as a default track. So I'm going to settings and I'm going to save the channel strip setting. That'll bring up this dialog. You can name this whatever you want, doesn't really matter. Let me call this Olaf default. Like so, and just save it. That's it. That's what you need to do. Now, there's one more step, very important. I'm going to go to the library. And as you'll see in the library, there's now a folder called User Channel Strip Settings. And this is the channel that we just loaded. If I add an audio track, it'll load with a couple other plugins that I used in an earlier track. But I want to override these. So I'm going to go into the User Channel Strip Settings again. Bring up Olaf Default that we just created. There's the channel strip. And now I'm going to right click and say define as default. And that will ensure that each time from now on that I create a new audio track, it gets loaded with all these plugins and the sends. I could even drop down the level for a bit of pre-gain staging. And of course, you can do this exact same thing with software instrument tracks. If you create a new track, you get the standard vintage electric piano. I don't need that. What I want is an EQ, an overdrive, and I want to drop the overdrive down just the same as I did with the audio track. I want to have a bypassed compressor on there and bring this one down a couple more. I want to have bus 3 and I want to have bus 4 as my two first choices for reverb. And now I'm going to, again, save it as MIDI Olaf. And now it shows up in my user channel strip settings. And again, I'm going to define as default. Now each time that I bring in a new instrument track, boom, there it is. With the EQ, the compressor, and the overdrive, and the sends. create a new audio track. Bam, there it is. The channel EQ, compressor, the overdrive. And this is how you can create default tracks.